In the heart of the Yoruba kingdom of Ife, a mysterious threat known only as Ugbo terrorized lives in the night. Invisible to some, spirits, they said, real to many. When all hope seemed lost, one woman made an unthinkable promise to a river god, risking heartbreak, betrayal, and even her own flesh to save her people. This is the story of Moremi Ajasoro's Oath, her journey from princess to captive, spy, queen, and ultimate sacrifice. Join us as we uncover the legends, the truths, and the lasting legacy of Moremi. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to dive deeper into Africa's untold stories. They say the land of Ile Ife was born of gods, cradled in the arms of the divine. A place where the Yoruba believed the world began. Lush forests surrounded its ancient walls. Markets buzzed with laughter, drums beat like heartbeats, and royalty moved with divine authority. But even paradise has shadows. Long before modern memory, a silent dread gripped the kingdom. It began slowly. A trader would disappear on the forest road. A village would be found burned. Its people vanished. Whispers crept through the palm groves. The Ugbo were coming. No one knew exactly who or what they were. Warriors, spirits, both? Survivors spoke of ghost-like raiders covered in raffia leaves, moving without sound, immune to blades, setting homes ablaze with unnatural fire. Some said they weren't men at all, but spirits from the underworld, angry and hungry. The Oba's warriors chased shadows and found only footprints that disappeared into thin air. Night fell like a curse. Children were silenced. Fires dimmed. Men watched the forests, swords shaking in their hands. Entire clans fled to the city walls of Ife, crying for protection. Inside the palace, the council argued, "How do you fight an enemy you cannot see, cannot touch, cannot kill?" Fear became a second skin, and at the heart of it all, one woman, Moremi Ajasoro, watched her people suffer. She was born noble, raised in strength, but even royalty was helpless against fear. Her own son clung to her, asking why the gods let monsters roam free. Moremi had no answer, yet beneath her silence burned a question even louder than the drums of war. If the warriors cannot stop the Ugbo, who can? Before she was a legend, Moremi was a woman of fire and silence. Born in Offa, her beauty was the first thing kings noticed, but it was her mind that made elders pause. When she married into the royal family of Ife, many saw it as a symbol of alliance. But within Moremi, something deeper stirred. She didn't come to Ife just to wear beads and bear heirs. She came with vision, with fury. The Ugbo attacks worsened. Refugees crowded the palace gates. Oranmiyan, her husband, tried to rally the warriors, but strategy failed. Sacrifices to the gods brought no answers. People muttered in corners, "The gods have abandoned us." And Moremi, watching children sleep on temple floors and women weep beside empty cradles, felt a different kind of rage, a rage wrapped in love. At first, she spoke little. Royal women were not meant to speak in the war councils, but when yet another raid struck, this time barely a mile from the palace, she stood before the chiefs and said, "You fear what you do not understand. Then let me understand them." The room fell silent, a queen speaking like a scout. The chiefs protested. Oranmiyan forbade it. "You are not a warrior," he said. She replied, "Then who is, if none of them dare face the darkness?" Her voice didn't tremble. Her eyes didn't blink. She wasn't asking for permission. She was declaring war in her own way. She sought answers beyond men. At the edge of the city, beneath the shadows of the Asimiran River, she whispered her decision to the waters. She would walk into the mouth of the beast. let herself be captured, learn its secrets, even if it meant death, even if it meant betrayal. But not even Moremi knew what price the spirits would ask in return. The river was ancient, older than the walls of Ifa, older even than memory. A Cimmerian, they called her, a goddess of secrets and sacrifice, of still water and silent power. Moremi came alone, cloaked not in silk but in palm fronds, barefoot, bearing nothing but a calabash of cola and fire. She knelt by the water, and the moon bent low to listen. "Ezimiran," she said, "if it is true that you see beyond what is hidden, show me the path into the heart of the Ugbo. Give me their truth, and I will repay you, no matter the cost." The water rippled. Wind stirred the reeds. Then silence. Moremi waited. Some say she stayed by the river for days. Others say the goddess answered in the silence of her sleep. But what all tales agree on is this. A pact was made. The goddess would grant her the path. But in return, Moremi must offer a sacrifice so precious it would break her soul. She didn't ask what that sacrifice would be, perhaps because she already knew. With the oath sealed, Moremi rose, her resolve as heavy as iron. She returned to If, not as queen, but as bait, her hair unbraided, her skin covered in ashes. She walked beyond the city gates alone, whispering prayers not of protection, but of capture. And the Ugbo came. They swept through the forest like ghosts and found her waiting. She didn't fight, she didn't flee. She looked into the masked faces of her enemies and said, "Take me." And they did. They led her deep into the unknown, past trees twisted like clenched fists, where moonlight never touched the soil. The Ugbo moved in silence, wrapped in layers of raffia and secrets. Their faces were hidden beneath masks of wood and bark. Their voices came only in murmurs, rituals, chants, sounds not meant for human ears. And Moremi, the queen of Ife, became a prisoner of ghosts. But she wasn't afraid. Among the Ugbo she played her part, a captive woman, weeping, obedient, yet behind her bowed head, her mind hunted. Every ritual, every whisper, every slip in their disguise, she memorized it all. She learned how they vanished into the trees. She learned their rhythm, their roots. She watched how their so-called magic was nothing more than illusion, how fire flickered from dried resin, how their immortality came from fear, not invincibility. But she learned something else too. They weren't spirits. They were people. Clever, fierce, ruthless, but mortal. Their raffia disguises created the myth of ghosts. Their silence made them gods. But under the leaves, they bled like any man. Still, she said nothing. She played her role so well, the Ugbo began to trust her. Some even admired her calm, her quiet strength. She became more than a slave. She became a symbol, an exotic figure in their forested world. The masked king, cloaked in bark and power, saw something in her. And so Moremi rose, again, not with weapons, but with wisdom. She saw their ceremonies, their weaknesses, their rules. She held their secrets like daggers hidden under cloth. And then, when the moment came, she vanished. Some say it was a guard who pitied her. Others say Ezimiran sent wind to lift the raffia and blind her captors. But one night, beneath a moon veiled in storm clouds, Moremi slipped into the forest alone and ran. Back toward If, back to the truth, back to vengeance. The road back to If was long, blood-stained and silent. Moremi ran barefoot through thorns and roots, her body cut, her soul burning. Behind her, the chants of the Ugbo echoed faintly, but she didn't look back. She had seen too much. She had learned their truth, and now she was ready to tear down their myth. When the gates of If opened and her people saw her return, some wept, others gasped. She was not the queen they remembered. Her royal glow had become a warrior's shadow. She asked for no rest. She went straight to the palace, straight to the Oba's council, and she told them what she had seen. "The Ugbo are not spirits," she said. "They are men. They wear raffia to frighten us. They hide behind rituals, but they bleed, and they can be broken." There was silence, then disbelief, then fire. Moremi unveiled their tactics, how they struck under moonless nights, how they lit fires with powdered resin, how their fear tactics kept enemies paralyzed. She described their masks, their paths through the forest, even the weaknesses in their formations. The council listened in awe and then in rage. Ife had been terrorized by myth, but now it had knowledge, and knowledge was sharper than any spear. Oranmian stood beside her, his voice thundering across the palace walls. "We were at war with shadows. Now we fight men. Let Ife rise," and rise it did. War drums echoed through the land. Warriors sharpened their blades not against spirits, but for strategy. For the first time in years, hope moved through the kingdom like dawn breaking after endless night. But Moremi, she remembered the oath. She remembered what the goddess Esimiran had promised, and what she would one day demand. Victory would come, but peace had a price. The morning of battle felt like prophecy. Ife's warriors stood at the gates, not with fear, but with fire in their eyes. Their spears gleamed in the early light. Drummers summoned thunder. Moremi stood atop the palace wall, watching, her heart torn between pride and dread. For the first time, the kingdom knew the truth, and now they would face it. The Ugbo came as they always had, shadows moving through trees, masked in raffia, chanting their eerie songs. But this time Ife was not silent. Warriors met them not with superstition, but with strategy. They set traps in the forest. They doused their own torches to blend into the dark. They moved in silence, just as Moremi had taught. And when the moment came, Ife struck first. Spears tore through raffia. Warriors lunged not at phantoms, but at men, and the masquerade unraveled. The Ugbo tried their old tricks, fire, masks, fear, but they were no longer gods. The people of Ife had seen behind the curtain, and they were angry. The battle roared across the jungle like thunder. The ground drank blood. Screams shook the trees. But this time it was the Ugbo who ran, and at the center of it all was Moremi. Though she did not fight with blade or bow, her weapon had already struck. She had shattered the illusion. She had armed her people with truth. By dusk, the Ugbo were driven back. Their camps burned. Their fear turned on them. And Ife, after years of silence and shame, roared in victory. Drums shook the skies. Dancers flooded the streets. Oranmian lifted his hands and declared the kingdom free. But even in celebration, Moremi's eyes searched the horizon, because she knew what others didn't. The goddess Esimiran does not forget. As chants of victory echoed through Ife, Moremi stood alone by the river's edge, the same place where she had whispered her promise, the same place where the silence had answered. She had kept her word. The people were free. The Ugbo were broken, but the goddess was still waiting. Esimiran did not speak in thunder. Her voice came as a mother's lullaby, soft and undeniable. The debt must be paid. Moremi's son, Oluwarogbo, was the brightest star in her sky, her only child, her joy, and the goddess had chosen him. At first, Moremi begged. She offered gold, cattle, land, even her own life. But Esimiran was not moved by mortal grief. The oath had been made. The victory had been won. The sacrifice would seal it. She walked with her son to the river. He was no longer a child. He knew. His eyes were calm, his face proud. "If my life brings peace to the people," he said, "then let it be so." And still, Moremi wept. Some say the water took him gently. Others say fire rose from the river to carry his spirit. But all agree on one thing. Oluwarogbo was gone, and the land wept with her. The people, once jubilant, were now broken by guilt. They had been saved at a cost too cruel to name. The Oba himself decreed that Moremi would never be forgotten, that her name would be carved in stone and her story told forever. But Moremi asked for no statues, only silence, only remembrance, only peace. Time passed. Kingdoms rose and fell, forests shifted, rivers changed course, but the story of Moremi never faded. In Ife, her name became legend, not just as a queen but as a savior, a woman who faced the unknown, who walked into the mouth of terror and gave everything for her people. Statues were built, songs were sung, and each year the Edi Festival was held, not just to honor her victory but to remind the people of what it cost. During the festival, no masquerades appear, no dancers wear raffia. It is a time of mourning, of memory, of silence, a pause in the heartbeat of the kingdom to feel the weight of her sacrifice. The youth are taught her story, not as myth, but as mirror, because Moremi is every person who chooses courage over comfort, every parent who would trade the world for their child, every leader who understands that power without sacrifice is empty. And what of Oluworogbo? The people say he became a god, that the heavens could not bear to keep him from earth, that he watches over the brave, whispering courage into their bones. His name, like hers, is etched into the soul of Yoruba land. Today, as statues rise and songs evolve, one truth remains. Moremi Ajasoro is not just a story, she is a lesson, that the greatest power lies not in swords or spells, but in sacrifice,